I've got my window frame and the timber pieces in the sash panel modelled as well, and I might just go to a shaded view to show you all of that. And so they will obviously need a material, all of those things, but I'm going to do that after the glass material, because the glass is maybe a bit simpler and I can just finish off the modelling by showing you that as well. So I'm going to select my sash panel family, edit family, and then go and make my glass. And look, to be honest here, a lot of people would make one piece of glass for the whole panel and then just have it overlapping the glazing bars. That works. Another way would be to use the join tool, but I'm fussy, and you probably can tell why. It's because things can go wrong, and also you're often creating work for yourselves if you do it in a quick and dirty way, and then find that you have to use this family 100 times in different places. And what you find then is that if you take the extra time and set it up properly, then over those 100 times you've used the family, it will work a lot better and save you a lot of time. So here, instead of making one big piece of glass and being a bit lazy, I'm going to use pick lines with the lock tool turned on and just pick inside each of these glazed panels. You can try using tab to see if it will get different selections for you, but I'd say it's not going to help you very much there. So I think really the only option is to pick each side, each of the four sides, and then trim. So there should only be 2 bits you need to trim. So again, when you're picking, it's important here to have lock on, otherwise you'd have to go and lock each side afterwards, which would be double the work. Still a bit of an effort, but again, it's worth it. Because these glazing bars and the sash frame can change. So they can be a different size, and I want the glass to always follow these timber pieces, no matter how they move or change size. Now, when you get warnings, like I'm about to get now, see how it's telling me highlighted lines overlap? Do you know if that's okay or not? If you see that warning? So just think about what you're doing. This line over here was done previously, the line at the bottom of that glass. So by making a new line here that goes all the way across, I've got an overlapping line. And that's normally something you want to avoid, but I know in this case that it was going to happen, and as long as I trim back to the corner there, the lines won't be overlapping. So just be prepared for that. Not all warnings are deal breakers, and in some cases you'll definitely anticipate them. So again, it's not a problem getting that warning because I knew the lines would be overlapping. So it doesn't take that long to pick all the sides and lock and trim everything as you go. Tick to finish, and then again, remember the trick I used to get it centered. I'll just open up the plan view as I do it, just to remind you. Okay, so instead of using any parameters or even locking dimensions, I'm just going to make the extrusion start -5 and the extrusion end 5, which means it's going to be 10 mil deep above and below the center line, so 5 mil above and below in this case. I'll show you that here. So that's again centered inside the wall and inside the window frame. That's the easy part. Then you need to put in the parameter for the glass, and that's the new thing. So I might actually save this again up to that point, because I promised you I'd save the window for you up to the point where you've got all the geometry done. So I'm just going to copy that again for you, and overwrite the one. Okay, so someone's opened it. That's okay, we'll delete that. Okay, so we've got the glass there made with that extrusion. I've just selected it. And then the sequence I think you should always follow when you're assigning a material parameter is to assign a default material first. So the way you should think about it is that there is a material already assigned. And I'll go to a shaded view just so you can see something. Okay, so it's grey. Now you might think when you select it and look in properties, it says by category, so there isn't actually anything assigned yet. But there must be because it's grey. And so essentially what's happening there is that it's using the categories material. Now you don't have to worry what that's set to, but you just need to know it is set to something. When we load this window in the first time, we don't want that material. We want a glass or some sort of material that would be good to use as a starting point. So I'm going to go and click Browse next to that material field where it's got by category. You can click the Browse button, and in most cases you'll have a default glass material that you can choose in your family file. So I just need to choose glass there, click OK, and that's assigned the default material. Now I'm going to make sure the object's selected again and click on the button next to the material field. So the same one you've been using to assign or associate parameters. Click on that button and then click the new button, and this will be either panel or sometimes that's a bit unclear, so you could even say glass material. Often you'll say panel because it could be something other than glass. In most cases though you can assume it's going to be some type of glass, so if you say glass material that's okay, people can work it out. So that's done. I've assigned the parameter, and so what does that parameter do? The parameter gives me the ability now to adjust that material when it's loaded. So when this family is loaded into my project, I can come and find this glass material parameter and I can change it to something else. So if you've got a lounge chair, if you make a lounge fabric material in your family file, when it's in your project you can assign any material you like to that lounge fabric material parameter. So it's making the material adjustable, in other words. And so I'll click OK. And then I'm going to, load into project, not the project just yet, but the family file at the top. Click OK. Override existing version, and it has changed all of those panels to glass. But if I go to family types, the way you have to adjust your dimensions, you can see there we've got, oh no, we don't have a material category, we'll have that in a second. We definitely don't have the material parameter. So how do I get that to come up in here? Select one of the sash panels, edit type, there's glass material. So notice how it's assigned to glass already because I set that default material. I'm not going to change that, I'm just going to click on the button next to it to associate, new, and I'll call this, just to make it really confusing, glass material. Is it going to let me do that? If this was a programming, if we were doing some types of programming, it wouldn't. Most modern programming languages actually would let you do that. So the technical problem could be that I'm using the same variable name for two different things, but they're within different objects. So it will let me use them. And but it's something to think about. If you're thinking that would be a problem, you're actually thinking the way you would have with most older programs. But again, now it's usually okay. So I'm going to click OK, that's worked, OK again, and again, and then I can go into family types. It's come up, there's glass, and I can click Browse, and I'll just change it to anything just to see that it's changing. If I click Apply, there we go. Back to here, I'll set it to glass again, click OK, OK, and that's working. I'm going to do that now. Hang on. Oh, great. Oh, is that the grey?
No more buying those crappy compatible.
I know. I did that for a year or two. I know. Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so the first part is just the same. The elements I've made in this family, in other words, the extrusions that I made for the side, the window jambs, the extrusions I made for the mullions. I'll start with those. Right, they're all objects that were made as part of this family. So I'm just selecting those using Control, and I'm going to go to the material field, Browse. Right, this is assigning my default material. Now, I don't have a good default timber material, so I'm going to make one. Hopefully you all remember this, but I'll remind you anyway. Just by right-clicking, you can duplicate any of those materials. And I'm going to call this timber painted. Oops, which is kind of what it is. What do you do next? Just to refresh your memory. Next thing? Exactly, yeah, that's good. Yep, appearance, and then what? Exactly, that's good. If you're remembering that, that's great. So yeah, duplicate or replace, same thing. And you just got to force yourself to remember that if it's not second nature already. It's not logical, but once you remember, it's not so bad. So going into here, we should have some white paint. And then back to graphics, I'll just tick use render appearance, and that's all I'm going to do for the material setup there. Then what do I do? Right, so I want to make sure that I also give a parameter. So that's assigned timber painted, but if I load this family in now to my project, that material's fixed. I can't change it until I come back to the family file. And even then, it's not easy. And the reason it's not easy is because timber painted, that white timber material I've just made, is in this family file. It's defined here. Say I load it into a project, then timber painted is defined there. We've got two definitions. If I then change it in the family file again, it doesn't change the definition in the project file. Just one of those things. I wish they would give me the option, but there's no option to do that. Yeah, it will confuse you, but it confuses everyone. Yeah. Everyone has this problem. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. You know, once you've done it, it'll be a lot clearer. You'll understand straight away what the issue is, and everyone comes across this because the first time you can do it. The first time you do it, say timber painted here, it can be set and made blue, and then I load it into my project first go, and it brings timber painted in and makes it there, and it'll be blue because that's the first time it's been made in that project. But then say I go back into this family, change it to white, load into the project, it'll still be blue because timber painted is blue in the project, and there's no way you can go and change timber painted in the project, but it's not going to relate back to your family file. So yeah, it gets confusing. The simple way around all of that is to use parameters, and that's really why I'm showing you these things. So by simply having a parameter there, and new again, and this will be frame material. Exactly. Yeah, it will. That's right. There's no way of, I mean there is, but there's no way of linking them again. There is a way of changing both, but you can't link them. Yeah. But this gets you around all of those problems. I know it can seem a bit technical and, you know, why am I doing this at first, but once you realise how useful it is, it becomes a lot easier. And it's one of those things, like a lot of the technical stuff in AutoCAD, it was always a little bit tricky, but once you start using it, it's much easier. And then you've got a great skill when you're going and looking for work, because a lot of people, even who are using Revit all the time, struggle with these things.
Can you choose the parameters with files that you can create?
Of course. Yeah, absolutely. You can add.
Every time it works.
Yeah. So you can get a family someone else has made where they've done everything except set the materials up properly, and then you can go and select all the objects they've made, assign your own parameters to them, save it as your file, and you've got that forever. So yeah, it works really well. Even things that are coming from AutoCAD, you can do that. So again here, I've got most of the objects set to the new material, but of course the sash panels aren't yet, so I'm going to select one of them, edit family, select my solids, and browse. Now, again, I said before that sorry, I won't do it that way, I'll do this a different way. So I'll select that again. And so, yeah, so again, I said before that you should always assign a default material. Here, I'm going to skip that step because this family really isn't being used on its own. It's only going to be used as part of that window. So I'm going to skip the step. You'll see in a minute why. So all I'm going to do is click on the Associate Family Parameter button, New, and we'll call this frame material again is okay. Okay. Save it, then load it. That's another good habit to get into. So if you are always doing that, you won't lose everything you've done in the file. So save before you load. And here, it doesn't matter which option I choose. I'll just choose the top one. Now all I need to do is select one of these sash panels, go to Edit Type. There's my frame material parameter. So all I need to do there is click on the Associate button, choose Frame Material. Okay, because I already had frame material in this file. And that's why I didn't worry about assigning material to it, because it's got one here. There we are. So now they all use the same material. What did I miss? The glazing bars. Not a big deal, because I'm using parameters. Easy to fix. Back into here. Now I can select one of the just the glazing bar object, and associate it with the same frame material parameter. That's it. It doesn't know that it's going to get the timber painted material. It doesn't need to know until it's loaded into the file where it uses it. There we are. So now all of those objects are tied to this parameter. And this again can make it a bit clearer why parameters are so useful, because if I didn't have a parameter, every time I wanted to change the materials of these things, I'd have to go and select each one. And that's how a lot of people do it when they've been trying to do things very quickly and just have a few objects. But say you've got a piece of furniture that has 20 different extrusions and other solids in it, you'd have to select each piece every time you want to assign a material. But if you assign a parameter just once to those things, then all you have to do is find the parameter to change all the materials. So that's done. I'm going to save that file. And so have a go at assigning material parameters to the families that I've given you on the P drive. So it looks exactly like this, but without the materials. And then when you load it, here you can see I've already loaded the window into this file. So I'm going to use the bottom option to show you what that does. So the top option would bring the family in, but I've done some things with the parameters. So I want to bring the values in from the family parameters that I've set up. And so now if I look at this in a shaded view, we'll see a bit dark there, so I'll go to consistent colours instead. There we are, so you can see it's got the glass and the painted timber. There we are. And of course, once one window's done, I'll show you a couple of little tricks. The array tool might be a good one to get copies for a lot of the windows, because they're all the same spacing up to the last bay. And so if you're not familiar with tools like that, it's a good chance to experiment with them. And so with the array tool, if you leave that group and associate button turned on, or the tick box, then you can actually just click a start point. So the start point on that grid line there can come across to the start point on the next grid line, and that should be the spacing of my windows, the grid spacing. And now notice how it gives me a chance again to give the count. I could have done it up here, but it's easier usually to do it afterwards. So I'm going to guess and say 6. Nope, not enough. It's fine. 7. There we go. So I think the last one is different from memory. So this one is 3820. This one after it is 3835. 15 mil. We still have to account for that. So I'm going to copy the last one And what I really wanted to show you with the array tool is that that will come up as a group. Do you know how you can tell if something's a group or part of a group? When something's part of a group, you'll see on the screen something will come up to show you that. So notice how the columns and the other things just highlight the object, but the windows, it's bringing up this dashed line around it, and that shows you that it's part of a group. So all of these windows are part of a group because I did them with an array. But I can copy one of them just like that, and then notice how it's still part of a group, but it's not part of the same group as the one over on the right. It's part of its own group of one. So there's not really much point in having a group like that. So you can simply ungroup any group, and now it's back to being a normal window. And so I will edit type, duplicate, and make the new size 3835. Put in the dimension for the width. Now it's probably gone and done that from the center, so I'm going to go to thin lines and use the align tool just to make sure it lines up exactly with the edge. Oh, missed it. There we go. And then check those. Oh, and then the first one I can get by using mirror. Oh, sorry, the first one, I've totally forgotten actually if the first one has the same spacing as the... oh no, it doesn't. Okay, so the first one's the same as the one next to it, so I'll just do the same thing again, copy, but this time I'll just ungroup that straight away. So I want to copy these up and also maybe flip them on the other side of the building, so I'm going to select all instances. Notice what happens? Exactly. Okay, so again, because they're all groups, so I'm going to select one of the grouped ones and then try the same thing, select all instances visible in view. So notice how the group is considered a different thing to the window that isn't part of the group, even though they're all the same window. So I'm going to ungroup these as well. I don't really need them to be an array anymore. And then just using control, I'll get the other two. Mirror, draw axis using the midpoint on the inside of the wall over here. And then again, select all instances. Might be the easiest way to select them all. Or, okay, I'll show you an easy way. Make a window over the whole lot, go to filter, check none, and then you can just turn windows back on. So very last thing, I'm just going to copy a clipboard and then paste a line to selected levels and select everything above level 1 except for the roof. 3D view, there we go. I know the windows at the top are different, but we'll look at changing those afterwards. But you know, you can see hopefully when you set things up well, all these things where you've got repetition, you can do really quickly.